Right. Hey, everybody. Good to see some of you back. It's always good to have repeat customers. My name is Rachelle Swan, and I would like to share how we use REDCap to manage our tracking and workflow and what we think, at least to us, is a very big and potentially chaotic study. Unlike the title of my presentation, it might feel like I'm taking you on a roller coaster ride. So feel free to raise your hand and ask me to slow down, or you can even ask me to explain something better. So first, I'd like to tell you a little bit about our lab. Sarah Carlunas is the principal investigator, and we're at Purdue University in the clinical psychology department. We opened up at the end of 2019, or right when COVID was happening, and we research individual differences in cognition, affect, and neurophysiology, allowing us to use the really cool and positive name of iCAN lab. I'm the operations specialist or lab manager, and you can see that we have a very busy lab with 27 staff and students. I was Sarah's first hire, and my job was to transform a pilot study that took place at Oregon Health and Science University to the real deal at Purdue University. We affectionately call this study another fun acronym, NEMO, or Neurophysiology of Emotion Study. It's a 5-year R01 grant from NIH. We're targeting 400 families, which means we're going to see about 600 families. We're trying to understand how children control their attention and emotions. And to do this, we collect data from 7 to 10-year-old children, a parent, and a teacher. We use a multi-method approach, and I have listed the types of data we collect. I created a chart to help you understand our NEMO workflow better. So the first thing we do is we screen families for eligibility, and we record the demographics. Then we collect remote data with REDCap surveys for parents and for teachers. Then we need to call parents to schedule 3 things: their clinical interview, which is over phone, their on-site visit at our lab at Purdue, and a series of phone surveys that they will take later. Then we collect our on-site data with the parent and the child, and they come to our lab for a 3.5-hour visit. After that, we collect the interview data and do our phone survey data with parents. And then we end up paying teachers and parents and entering non-REDCap data into an SPSS data set or sets. And we do double entry to make sure to check accuracy. And finally, we send some clinical feedback letters to families who request them, which requires scoring, writing, and mailing. So to take a family from consent signing to payment, it averages about 4 months. I added a few numbers on here to show you how much we really have going on. So for the collecting remote data for parents and teachers, the numbers are just representative of the number of instruments in a REDCap project for them. You can see that the on-site parent survey has 23 instruments. Our phone surveys are actually 2 instruments and 42 events because we collect them 3 times a day for 14 days. Now, automatic survey invitations has a repeated measures option. And when this was designed, it did not have that. So that's why we have the 42 events. We also pay teachers with Amazon gift cards, and we pay parents with checks through our business office. So 2 very different procedures. And we have a total of 4 SPSS data sets that we enter our non-REDCap data into. And we pull data from 3 different assessments to do the scoring clinical feedback. On top of that, we're recruiting families. We're nudging families to recruit teachers. We're programming Twilio to send our phone surveys on the exact time that we want them to be sent. We're preparing for our on-site visit by filling out a lot of paperwork that takes information stored in REDCap. We're also doing the same thing to prepare for the interview. So 45 instruments plus 48 events plus 25 cooks in the kitchen equals everything, everywhere, all at once. My research background is in program evaluation, And the most sophisticated software I had used before REDCap was SurveyMonkey, so you could understand how REDCap really wowed me. As I began to use it, I saw ways I could bend it into meeting project management needs. This ultimately led to the creation of the tracking form. I define the tracking form as a fluid form within your REDCap project containing every piece of information and action needed to take participants through the data collection pipeline. Basically, one place to track and manage workflow. Some benefits are increases in administration efficiency, improvements in data quality, it ensures IRB compliance, and it promotes a positive research experience not only for the research participant, but for research staff who are trying to juggle all these pieces. There's a lot I can share about this form and our workflow, so I want to define the objectives of my talk today. I plan to give you ideas on the types of project administration data you can track, show you how to integrate them into one tool or project command center, and highlight the REDCap features I use to create it. I will not be teaching you how to use the REDCap features I'm going over for the most part because I assume you are already familiar with these features. So now I'm going to zoom back out a little bit and give you a forest view of what this looks like. Who uses it? Project administration staff with viewing and editing rights. It's located as the first instrument in my project, not enabled as a survey, so it's easier to make edits. It's organized chronologically according to the data collection pipeline. It's divided into sections based on task or function. I have the record ID as the first field in this instrument. It uses formatting for optimal visualization. It does not use branching. And how is it fluid? We are collecting data for 5 years, and we all know how study needs can change over time. For example, we began in the middle of COVID, and we had all these different COVID protocols we had to follow, and then those protocols changed, and then they were removed altogether. So we needed a form that would require tracking and workflow flexibility, and then we were able to achieve this by adding or changing fields, field labels, and field choices, and moving and hiding fields. So now what does this form do? Currently, the form I have has 139 fields, and I was able to boil them down to these 4 functions. It documents information, shares information, calculates dates and figures, and triggers actions. I wanted to give you an idea about how we use these sections. So I'm just going to scroll through this quickly. Oops, here are the different sections we have in the form. The one that might need more explaining is special tracking needs. So we use our form to keep an eye on temporary administration tasks, such as rescheduling a group of families who happen to be rescheduling a group of families because COVID shut down our lab for a week, or flagging families who need to wait for next year's school teacher because their current school teacher did not participate. And we put this section at the top of our form, making it easy to access. And then the other thing there is the hidden field graveyard. It's just the last section in my form, and I just move all the fields that we no longer use there to get them out of the way. Now I'm going to drill down and show you how the form is created. Like a typical survey, the form is made up of field types, and it uses most of the field types that REDCap offers. I'll quickly go through each one and tell you how we use it specifically for project management. So we've got the text box. Example of how we use this is the date we sent the payment to the business office, the date and time of the visit, and recording the gift card receipt number for teacher payment. The larger notes box, we keep our log of all participant contacts and activity. And another thing we can use it for is to make a bigger space to record reasons for study withdrawal or protocol notes to mark anomalies in the data collection. The calculation field is awesome. I use it a lot to do specific things like creating a participation window expiration date. So we know when a family expires and before they expire, so we can try to contact them to finish. The families are allowed in our study to take 9 months to complete our study. And if they do expire, they can sign a new consent form. So this helps us stay up on top of that process. I can calculate the age of the child on the day of data collection, and I can calculate the date to resume medication if there had been a washout period. The drop-down list I basically use for staff names and diagnoses. The radio buttons is something that we use a lot. For example, we can mark off the reason a family will not participate. We can create a research flag, such as do not contact in the future button. And we can trigger a survey to be sent. For checkboxes, this is great to have task checklists and data checklists right there in REDCap. You can mark off reasons for ineligibility, or you can check off tasks in a workflow sequence. For the descriptive field, we use this to merge information needed for a task into one spot. And we can attach information such as a medication list for screening. And the begin use section is just for tracking form organization. I also have 4 action tags I commonly use. The first one provides some helpful project information so we don't have to turn to things like date calculators on our phones. And the others mainly help with flexibility and organization of the form. I also use some special functions. I heavily rely on the date diff function to provide helpful project information. And this is usually combined with the round down or round functions. Now here's some examples of how to calculate the age of the child on a certain day and how to calculate the number of months from consent to payment. And I know simple math functions are not technically special functions, but I thought this was a good place to show you that you can use REDCap to calculate fields, much like you can use Excel to calculate cells. So here I just calculated how much we owe a parent for the miles that they drove to our study. Other project management tools in REDCap we use piping, field notes, reports, and record status dashboards. We use piping to insert previously collected information. Piping helps us fight the urge to duplicate data. We also use field notes to clarify and provide instructions. We use reports when we want to manage the project at the field level. For example, if I wanted a list of everyone's contact notes who has not yet completed their survey. And I use record status dashboards to create a record of I use a record status dashboard when we want to manage at the record level, such as a board of all of my active participants or a board of all of my completed participants. So zooming back out, here are the 4 functions of the tracking form. Again, documenting, sharing, calculating, and triggering. When it comes to documenting information, I came up with 5 different types of information we document: history of contacts and activity, workflow task completion, important dates and times, eligibility and participation information, and participant compensation. Here's an example of our contact. You can see I have instructions on how to use this log in the field notes, and then the actual contact and activity are entered into the notes box. You can click on expand to show this entire field on your screen at one time. And then I give you some general guidelines on how to record information in the log, including the tip to write in the third person, so any action can be tied to the person who did it. Here's an example of the clinical interview section. You can see we record the date and time of the visit, the staff who scheduled the visit, and the date we sent the parent the confirmation email. I hid the today button because we do not schedule interviews on the same day. I used field notes to translate military time because my staff first scheduled the appointment over the phone, and then there are so many other details that they're juggling. I don't want them to have to try to think about what does 2:30 p.m. mean in military time when they are filling this out in REDCap. And then here I kept the today stamp because today was a possible date. I also wanted to show you that field labels are optional. If you don't want to clutter your form with more text, you just don't have to put in a field label. And as you know, we collect a lot of data outside of REDCap. Having a completion status button for these tasks is equivalent to having the automated completion status field for instruments within REDCap. So do you remember when I said that this form can help you ensure IRB compliance? Well, here's an example. In our protocol, we say we are going to delete the parent's social security number and residency status on the parent payment form when we send the data to the business office to cut that check for them. It is so easy to forget this step if you don't have a button to click to make sure you did it. So if you're using the tracking form in this way, you too can avoid IRB phase. Here are some fields from our eligibility and participation section so you can see what data we collect and how we collect it. I want to point out the use of highlighting field labels. So here I use it for organization, and here I use it for flagging. Here's our participant compensation section, or at least a snippet from the parent, because we have a lot of different fields determining how much a parent gets paid in the end, because there's a different amount for different tasks. We have the parent's address piped in, information about mileage reimbursement, and then an automatic calculation field to add up all the payment fields. We also date stamp when we send this information to our business office, and when we send the family a confirmation email that their check is in the mail. The only manual calculation really is the mileage that the parents are driving to the lab. Unfortunately, it can take up to 6 weeks for our business office to process the payment check. So I want to set this expectation up with families, and I use the calc date function at the bottom to do this. So I know the exact date 6 weeks from me sending it to the business office to put in their email. Also, I wanted to show that you can switch the alignment to have key information stick out quickly. So sharing information. I've already talked about some of the way the tracking form shares information through field notes. And the other way that the form shares information is through piping and attachments. Here's a screenshot of the section we used to prepare our paperwork for our family on-site visit. Information is piped in from 3 different instruments into events. And now I'm showing that it can even be helpful to pipe information in from the tracking form itself. I also find it helpful to distinguish piped information by highlighting. And I want to point out that you can list unlimited information in just one descriptive field. So this is just one field I'm showing, and you can just keep adding information as you don't have to add another field for every piece of information you add. This is just showing how we attach a document in the form. This is a list of medications that we use for screening, and it makes sense to keep a copy of it where we need to look at it. I've already shared how the tracking form calculates future dates, ages, and dollars, and now I will show you what I mean by its ability to calculate time. As a project manager, I want to make sure we are meeting our workflow targets. So I calculate how many months it takes a family to get through the study as well as how many days it takes our staff to do a process like scoring, writing, and mailing the clinical feedback letter to families. Now I'm going to briefly go over how you can trigger workflow action using the tracking form. So we're triggering data collection, participant reminders, and lab staff alerts. You can use a trigger button in the form to send a survey immediately, or you can use a date field in the form to schedule the survey to be sent on a certain date. To do this, we use the ASIs, or automated survey invitations. And we use it in the first instrument of the survey that we want to send. You can either trigger this action with the radio button or with the date stamp, which gives you 2 functions with 1 click. The survey will not actually send until you save the form. Here's how an example of triggering participant reminders. You can send an appointment reminder so many days before the appointment date. We send a reminder 3 days before the time and 1 day before the time. You use alerts and notifications to do this. I wanted to give you a note of caution. When you schedule a new participant reminder, you need to add a stop logic to your REDCap logic so that participants who have already completed the survey, the study, will not receive a reminder. This was a mistake I made because I assumed REDCap would not send an alert scheduled to be sent the day before on a date that is already passed. Thankfully, this happened in a study that didn't have too many completed participants, and I was able to send them a text telling them to disregard the appointment reminder. It's also good that I piped in the actual date timestamp so it was clear to them that it was sent by mistake. And then I give you the logic here to know how to do this. Here's an example of what our appointment reminder looks like. The participant receives the reminder at the same time the appointment starts on the day you schedule it for it to be sent. And you can see that I point out in this reminder that the time is in military time. And I hope someday REDCap can help us translate military time into standard time. Finally, we use information in our tracking form to alert staff when a certain condition in a field is met. And I use alerts and notifications for this. We program the alert to go to the right person. Some common lab alerts are questions for the PI, participation, an alert that the participation window is about to expire next month, or that the participation contact window has expired. Participant has failed to open the survey in 3 weeks, so we can go and check in, see what's going on. And then to check participation on that long phone survey, we actually have alerts to check to make sure they start the 14-day survey. We have a check in the middle and we have a check towards the end, so we can make sure they complete at least half of the surveys, which is really important for us for our data. Now I'd like to end with some tips. First, try to limit making changes to any fields that do not improve data quality. You will have more flexibility with making changes if you put your details in your field notes and not in your choices. And then the way a choice is worded, if it really bugs you, see if you can add some field notes to make you feel better about it. Second, train your staff well. Not only how to use the tracking form, but how to use the language in the tracking form. For example, talk about the differences between terms like withdrew, dropped out, and timed out. Decide on the best term to use and then reinforce using that term. Finally, empower your staff to suggest improvements. Our workflow is so automated and efficient using this form that I have been able to step away from my day-to-day project management and rely on my staff to pay attention to the ways that I can improve it. That went by quicker than I thought. So hopefully we have some good time to discuss, but I do want to give a big thanks to REDCap's support, especially with their commitment to office hours. I would often frequent office hours with Catherine. She helped me work through some of the things that I wanted to do. And that was invaluable. And I'd also like to thank my research assistant, Sydney Aller. She's in the back room, and she is great with helping me through project management. She is also presenting on another form we created in our lab to manage undergraduate research assistants in the next session.
So I noticed a little anomaly in our schedule where this session was supposed to end right at the same second the session was supposed to end. So if we can stop at 1:50.
Okay. Okay, so that's 9 minutes.
Yes. 9 minutes.
Yes.
Do you have a sample of this form? Can we see what the form looks like or how you could?
I thought about, yes. I was asked if I could show a sample of the form, and I'm happy to do that. I can log into REDCap if we have time, and I made a demo for this presentation. Yes.
So I'd be along the same lines. So I'm picturing I do a lot of this work in Excel.
Mm-hmm.
So how would I look at everything as a whole? Not just one patient, but I want to see all of my patients, where they are. Like, with the record dashboard.
The record status dashboard is the best place. Oh, sorry, I didn't repeat the question.
Did you repeat it?
The question is, how do you see this kind of project management data for an entire group of people and not individual? And that's where I use our record status dashboards. I probably have, I don't know, probably about 40 dashboards that I use actively. And if I can log on here, I can show you what those might look like as well. So just letting everybody who's watching online know that we are ending at 1:50. Okay.
Talk a little bit more about how you monitor task completion. So for example, is there a way that could be automated somehow rather than just asking the RA, okay, after you finish this task, go up to this study status button and reflect the update?
Where the automation comes in is through alerts and notifications. So let's say we have a task list of processing this clinical feedback letter. There's 4 different people who are involved in this process. So the person who completes their step clicks the checkbox that they did their step. That automatically sends an alert to the next person that, hey, we're ready for you to do your step. And when that person does their step, they click their finish box, which automatically sends an alert to go to the next person. So in a way it's automated, but in a way you still have to do that initial click. Does that answer your question?
It does, and I guess relatedly, you mentioned something about a workflow where you flag, like you have a flag if, for example, somebody doesn't want to participate in the research, or somebody withdraws, or some other reason. Where does that flag appear, and how do you create that process?
It's just a radio button field, and you put it wherever you want. You can even title a whole section of flags with your a new section. And the way I flag mine is that I highlight them in red. I highlight the field label in red So I can visually see it's a flag, and it's in an area where I know I keep flags.
Okay, thank you.
She's asking if you have any advice for a first-time user of RC for studying a data poll for a retrospective study, sorting through the data, importing the data, organizing it.
I would just think through all the steps you need to do that process, and then create either a checkbox task list. And depending on how many people are involved, like I talked about us completing our clinical feedback letter, you can have an alert go to the next person. I don't know. I think, like I said, this is a very flexible form. So the way you might think it works best, you might end up wanting to change it after you really dig in and see what your needs are as well. So I appreciate the flexibility of having it as a form, and having all the multiple tools like the alerts and notifications and the field types to use. Yes, you are able to trigger surveys in this form. I showed 2 ways to do that. One is you just click a radio button that says send the survey. And the other one is you can get more information by clicking a date stamp. So you can program that date stamp to send a survey, and then you know the date it was sent right there. That's okay. Yeah. I can definitely, yes, I'd be happy to share the demo project with anybody who would like to see it. I have my email right here, Rachelle@purdue.edu. It's easy. Well, when I came to Purdue 22 years ago for a postdoc, it was available. And then when I came back, it was still available. Yes.
They do have a way to pipe AMP now. They just
Oh, they do have a way?
put the piping and then you put colon AM PM.
Okay, so I'm told that there is a way to pipe in standard time, AM and PM, instead of military time. Thank you.
Record everything, but if you're sending like an email.
Okay, that sounds great.